Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Tearlament guide. So last time we talked about the core Tearlament cards, Kashtira, Shadol's Heroes, so the engines that are more commonly used. Today we're going to talk about stuff like the Synchron package, which with Revolution Synchron releasing in Duelist Nexus is probably something that a lot of people are hyped for. So I'm going to talk about that today. What I've come up with in testing so far, what I've seen, and what you can take from there. And then we also talk about some other less used engines that are still maybe worth talking about, or just maybe give you some inspiration on what to do with Tearlament. So without further ado, let's go. So Synchrons is probably the one engine that most people are excited about heading into June. Now, as of recording of this video, we haven't gotten June yet. So I don't have the cards yet, but I will make sure to visualize it to my best abilities. All right, so let's head into it. So obviously we run 3 tuning. You can run just the Synchrons, but I like having the tuning and the Synchrons. My favorite ratio is 3 tuning and 2 Revolution Synchrons. Because having multiple Revolution Synchrons can sometimes you can't use the multiples, whereas multiple tunings you at least get a mill. The nice thing is tuning after adding the Rev Synchron, it mills 1 for a card effect, so it can trigger your stuff, and also it gets you 2 thinning out of your deck, so you have more efficient mills. Now for the Synchron, obviously I don't have it yet, so if you look closely, this is a Revolution Synchron. So the ratio I would play is like 3 and 2. Or if you don't want to run tuning, you just run 3 of those. Now, the important thing with Revolution Synchron, if you haven't read it, is it's a level 3 tuner that you can use from hand if you make a level 7 or 8 Synchro Dragon or a Power Tool Dragon. So if you think about what this deck does is with a level 3, we probably want to use our level 4s to make a level 7. So the level 4s at our disposals are Rhinoheart, Shiren, Kelbeck, Keldo, Guido, Mudora. These are the ones that are standard in the deck, but some level 4s you can also consider is playing a Riseheart if you play a Kashtira package, so you have a searchable level 4. Or what I would definitely recommend is swapping the King of the Swamps for Beast King of the Swamp, because this is a level 4 and it also has the fusion substitute effect. And the Synchron lists from my testing are a bit more space heavy. So cutting the poly can give you more space for your Synchron lines. So these are like the level 4s you should consider. If any of your other engines also have level 4s, or if you play like a Zephyros, that also works. So what you do is, with the Rev Synchron, you have it in your hand, and you have a level 4. Let's just use Agido. Usually you want to keep the millers in hand and use other level 4s, but maybe sometimes you just can't do anything else. And what you do here is you will use the Agido and the level 3 and go into a level 7. Now, the most commonly used is the Ancient Fairy Dragon, because it can swap your field spells and can special summon also from hand. It's very nice, just a nice bridge piece. And then, because you have a level 7 or higher Synchro, you can use the Rev Synchron effect on Grave, bring it back, mill a card, and now you have a level 1 tuner and a level 7 Synchro non-tuner. And what you can do here, we don't have Chaos Ruler sadly, but one of the most common ones is just Crystal Wing, which is really nice because this whole line works without using any tier name. So by going into Crystal Wing, you have now a negate for first Nibiru obviously, but also for all the Bestials. So now you can fuse without fear of being Magnamud. Now, a different Synchro that you can use is the new Visa Synchro. And what that does is, similar to Trivi Karma, it adds a card that mentions Visa Starfrost. So you have the choice between this and Visas, and it depends on, do you want an end piece for your board, or do you want to get into your engine better? For example, if your hand can already play, you have a Polarino hand, for example, it's probably smart to go into Crystal Wing. But if your hand doesn't play and you need to get more pieces, then it's better to go to Visas and add like a Polarino or Scream or whatever. Note that the Visas Synchro is treated as Visas Starfrost on the field. So you could build like a Scareclaw hybrid where you can link off the Synchro after you got the field spell into the link one Scareclaw and then grab the field spell from there, and then you have 2 field spells and can extend from there. Now, let me show you like an example line with the Revolution Synchron, and for that I'll just demonstrate what's nice about having the Rise Heart. So let's say you start with Red Soft and the Revolution Synchron. So what you can do is you go Red Soft, you add your Fenrir, use special Fenrir, use the effect, add Rise Heart to hand, then you normal the Rise Heart, don't special, because then you're like Xyz locked, and then you can go Rise Heart plus the Revolution Synchron into Ancient Fairy Dragon. Now Ancient Fairy Dragon can use the effect to pop the field spell and add you Polarino. And then you can also go and use the Rev Synchron Engrave, get it back, mill 1, and now you have pieces for your Crystal Wing. But what you can also do is you can activate the Polarino to grab your Rhino Heart, then use the Ancient Fairy Dragon effect to special the Rhino Heart, use the effect of Rhino Heart, and then you can Synchro into your Crystal Wing. So that is one of the more standard lines that Revolution Synchron can do. You can also just go into Visas here and add something else. But in this case, you already have the Polarino. If you just had level 4 and you didn't have the Kashtira part, then you also can swap the field spell. Then, depending on your hand, you can go to Visas. Now, this is kind of the standard line that most people thought of when they saw Revolution Synchron, but another line that I saw somewhere is as follows, and I thought that was definitely worth mentioning. So let's take another level 4. Let's take Agido again, and our Rev Synchron, and anything else we need? Yeah, we need Tier Cache. So what you can do here is a different line, and that's Agido plus the Rev Synchron into Shooting Riser Dragon, because it's also a level 7 dragon. And then for the effect, Shooting Riser Dragon sends a monster from your deck to your graveyard and subtracts that level from itself. So one thing you can do here is you can send Beast King of the Swamp. The monster that you send, you cannot use the effects of that monster or monster with that name in the turn, which is not relevant here, but you can't like send a Shiren and then fusion, so that doesn't work. But you send a Beast King of the Swamp, and now the Shooting Riser is level 3, and you have a Fusion Sub Engrave. And then you can special summon the Tier Cache if you have like a Tearlament card or a Kashtira card in the graveyard. Mill 3, hopefully hit a tier name so you can fuse with this, and then 3 plus 7 will get you a Baron de Fleur. And then you have a level 10. Now, Blackwings is an engine that has popped up on DB, so I've seen it on DB Grinder a lot, and it's also used to extend your plays. In this case, it all revolves around one Synchro monster, which is Boreas Storm the Wicked. So this is a level 6 Synchro tuner that on summon sends a Blackwing from your deck to the graveyard, and then it copies the level. So how that works here is that, for an example, you run a level 2 tuner, let's say Assault Synchron, and any level 4. We take Agido again for that example, and what you do is you can go Assault Synchron and then Synchro these off into Boreas Storm, and that on summon can send 2 things. You have 2 options. You have Sephiroth and you have Zonda. Now, Zephyros, you should know. Zonda, if you don't play Blackwings, this card on the field, it's a level 6 Dark Winged Beast. You cannot summon monsters from the extra deck except for Synchro monsters. And what it also does in the graveyard is you can banish it from the grave to summon a level 5 or higher Blackwing monster from your deck, and then you take damage equal to the attack. So you have the two options here, and depending on what options you go for, if you do this, you have a setup of level 4 tuner and level 4 non-tuner, and you can go into level 8. And what people have done is they went into the Black Feather Dark Rage Dragon, I think. It's the alternate Black Winged Dragon. And what that does is when you take damage, you can send up to 5 cards from the top of your deck, which obviously is very good in Tearlament. So it's kind of a knockoff Chaos Ruler. And the way to trigger it is either by Zephyros from grave or Assault Synchron from hand. So if you have another way to go into this, and then you can special summon the Assault Synchron after you did the Synchro into Dark Rage. The other option, Zonda also damages you, so you can also just use the Zephyros and the Assault Wing to go into Black Feather, and then you banish the Zonda, special summon from your deck, and you then take damage in mill 5. Now, regarding Zonda, you can also go just Borea Storm, send Zonda, and then this level stays 6, level 6 tuner, and you can banish this to special summon if you want to take as little damage as possible, you summon Simoon. There's also a Blackwing tuner level 6, which the name I don't remember, it's something with K. If you want a tuner, you can run that, but it has a bit more attack, so you take more damage. So with this setup, you can by making this, you can, for example, go into a Beatrice. Or if you have this and you've sent this, what you can also do is with any level 4, you just make or on the floor. So that's it for what Blackwings can do for this deck. Okay, now let's talk about Branded. Branded is another fusion-heavy archetype, so trying to mix that with this is not the worst idea. Actually, people have played this deck in the Duelist Cup, in Master Duel, where Tearlament is also limited, not as limited as here, but it was a little bit less consistent, so they tried to make up for the lost consistency by adding some branded cards. So adding a branded engine to your deck would mean you add the following power cards, obviously Branded Fusion and Fusion Deployment. Now, both of these lock you into fusions for the whole turn, so even before that you cannot exceed Synchro or Link Summon. So keep that in mind when playing this deck. You are very, very focused on fusion summoning here, and you don't do a lot of other plays. So if you build a branded Tearlament hybrid, probably only run like 1 or 2 non-fusion monsters in your extra deck for certain cases. Now, Fusion Deployment is an interesting card because in Branded usually you get Cartesia out, which we also do here. But in Tearlament you also have other options. So obviously Albaz is also a target because you run the Albaz Fusion, so this is nice going second. Makes Fusion Deployment a card that you can use going second, especially if you have Fusion Deployment and Tearlament Miller, like an Agido. You can special summon Albaz, discard the Agido, and even if they negate the Albaz, you ditch the Agido and you mill 5 after that, so it's nice for going second. And the third target for Fusion Deployment is the Rhino Heart. So if you already have a great setup, you can use Fusion Deployment into Rhino Heart, mill a tier name, and fuse from there. So this is what the engine does for you, and a small little combo that I came up with testing this deck was the following. So that is just Cartesia and any Tearlament name. In this case, let's say it's Havness. Let's say you Fusion Deployment into Cartesia, special, activate the effect, and fuse with the Havness. Now, you go into Granguinol, and what you do is you go Chainlink 1 Havness, Chainlink 2 Granguinol. Now, They can ash this because it's chaining 2, but it's very important that this is chaining 2 for this combo. If they ash this, what you just do is you go Havness plus this into Drago's Stapelia. But if they don't ash this, what you do is you send as chaining 2 Mud Dragon. And Mud Dragon, if you don't know this card, it also acts as a fusion substitute when it's on the field or in the graveyard. So now that this is in the grave, in your Chain Link 1, you can use Havness and the Mud Dragon and fuse them into a Rule Colors, for example, or a Grapha. And you also have the Granguinol on board for whatever you want to do with it. Fusion summon, because you're locked, usually. What's also nice is if that's not all you do in this turn and you somehow get a fusion into the grave, Cartesia's effect lets you add it back to your hand. So that in this case, you go for Grapha, you already have the discard for the Grapha. So you negate something and you discard the Cartesia and you can get it back at that turn too. So it's just free resources in this case. Now, other fusions you would play in a branded hybrid would be the Lubellion, because with the branded fusion, you want to be able to send a Tearlament name. So you go branded fusion plus a Tearlament name and Albas to go into this, and you can then fuse with these in the graveyard after that chain. And obviously around the Mirror Jade, just because it's a strong boss monster that you can get off of branded fusion. And what's also really nice is you can go into the Albion actually. And the nice thing about Albion is you can side stuff like Jinzo or Invader of Darkness or even the Puppet Lock, because all of them can be sent off of Granguinol. But also, what's nice is if you have Albion on board, you can actually recycle your Kaleido Heart, which, since Kaleido Heart can't be used as a fusion material, it can be very tough to recycle this card. But with Albion, you can just special summon this back and you get back into your grind game if this somehow has been outed. So that's it for the branded engine. I played the deck a bit. It is pretty decent, but the lock into just fusions were the reason why. Okay, these two engines, there's not much to say about them, but I think they're relevant enough to include them in this video. But I just put them in this segment together. So the first one would be Dangers. Mostly the whole Danger package would revolve around Nessie, because Nessie is a Dark Aqua, which, just like the Tearlaments, has the same attribute. And typing, which means you can use a Tearlament and Nessie to go into Garura, and then link that off, or Synchro if you run tuners. And it's also level 7, so with that you can do Dracossack lines. I actually like Dracossack lines more in Danger builds, just because the level 7 Nessie is more expendable than, say, a Fenrir, which is already good on its own on the board. Now, you probably want to run another Danger name, because if you discard Nessie with its own effect, you want to benefit off of it. And the two dangers to consider are Jackalope, if you want to focus even more around the rank 7 plays with Nessie, because if you discard the Jackalope due to its own effect, or like Sharon, you can get the Nessie out of the deck. If you want to focus more on rank 4 plays, like general plays, you can run a Mothman, which is also a dark insect, so you can use it to make Mud Dragon, and it's level 4, so you can do rank 4 plays with it. That's it for the Danger package. It's just like a small extender package that you can play. I personally do not run them anymore because I feel like the impact on these cards are not high enough. It's just like a body on board that sometimes triggers effects, and I'd rather, like, because the deck is so tight, I'd rather have like more meaningful cards than the Dangers. But I just wanted to present them in this video. Now, speaking of impact, the other engine that you can run is a Rescue Ace engine. Now, Rescue Ace is going to be a bit more prominent after Duelist Nexus, but in case you don't know what Rescue Ace Impulse does, is if the opponent activates a monster effect on the field, you can tribute this from your hand, and you special summon a different Rescue Ace monster from your deck. So this is kind of like a hand trap. And the Rescue Ace that you run with it is this Fire Attacker, I think. I just have the cards in German. It's a level 6 machine, and the effect is if your opponent adds a card to the hand, you can draw 2 cards and discard 1. Now, how that works is it's a bit meta dependent, but let's say in your locals there is a lot of branded. Now, against like Alubar or like generally Stratos-like effects, this engine is really, really powerful because your opponent activates Alubar, so they activate a monster effect, and you can use Impulse effect to get Fire Attacker, and then they have to resolve the effect and add a card to the hand, which then triggers the Fire Attacker. You draw 2 and then you pitch a card. Preferably you pitch something like Agido or Kelbeck. That's really, really strong, because then you just start playing your opponent's turn. Otherwise, what you do is you can just draw into your go second cards, maybe get like a Grave effect off, that also helps. But yeah, so another thing is if you draw these 2 together, so Impulse has another effect. During the main phase, you can prevent the highest attack monster of your opponent from activating its effects, and Fire Attacker, if you summon a Rescue Ace monster, you can special this from hand. It's not ideal, but if you draw those 2 together, you can at least normal and special, and you have 2 bodies on board. But preferably you just don't draw this, and you just hand trap your opponent with this. Another thing to note is, because it's level 6, you can use it as a body for Beatrice after you've hand trapped your opponent. So small engine, high impact, but meta dependent. That's Rescue Ace. Now, for the last engine I wanted to demonstrate, it's something that has been falling off, that we haven't seen since Power of the Element format, but that is the Lunalight engine. So during Power of the Element, this was an engine that was played towards the end of the format, but then we got Darkwing Blast, and this wasn't needed anymore, and then we got into Tier 0 and so on and so forth. Just one disclaimer here. The reason why I haven't experimented much with these cards is because the Lunalight engine itself is also very grave aligned, so you're just adding more cards, and it's a big engine, so you're just playing a full gas build. And due to its grave reliance, you just lack the space to do something against a Rise Heart. And you just add more cards that are bad into a Rise Heart into the deck. So that is why I haven't experimented with it. And also, just like full gas decks are not usually my thing. But I was just going to show you why these would make sense if you want to try it out, if you like Lunalights, or if you just want to play a full combo deck, then that's definitely something you can do. So you probably are familiar with the Chick Tiger combo, but just like to demonstrate you, if you somehow access these 2 cards, which are both searchable by Tenki if you want, you can do something like normal summon the Kaleido, send the Martin into the grave as cost, then you go Tiger effect, resurrects the Martin, you overlay, go into the Goris or whatever, just any exes that you want to use, you detach, get the benefit off of it, and then you use Martin, special summon it, bounce the Tiger, activate the Tiger again, get back the Chick, and you just can go from there. Now, in Tearlament, that's usually not how you open. It's not like a linear combo deck. You usually have a bit more moving pieces. So what you usually want to do is, you can link them off to Masquerena. What you usually want to do is you somehow get 2 Lunalight monsters on board, and what you do is, they're both Beast Warriors. You go into Bujintei Kagutsuchi, which on summon mills 5 cards. This will just get you started. So the Lunalight engine is nice into getting you into your Tier Ishizu engine, because you just mill 5, and then you have a body left over to do whatever you want with it. Now, other cards you want to run with this engine is, for example, the Lunalight Perfume, which is a monster reborn for Lunalights, or if it's in the grave, you can banish it and discard a card to add a Lunalight monster. So the discard is cost, so it will only trigger the Ishizu cards here, but there's also Serenade Dance, which has the effect that you can banish it during your main phase from your grave to special summon a Lunalight monster from your deck, and you discard a card. Here, the discard is part of the effect, so this could trigger your Tearlaments. So these are just good mills to get you from your Tearlament engine into your Lunalight engine. So you see how this works together. This gets you into the Tearlament engine. This gets you, this can get you into your Lunalight engine if you mill it from your Tearlament engine. Now, other cards that are good are Foolish Burial Goods. In this version, I would definitely run 3 because you can send Trivy Karma, you can send Tearlament cards, you can send these 2, especially Serenade Dance. If you have 2 Burial Goods, you just send 1 Serenade Dance, banish it, you can discard the second one, get into your Lunalight cards. So definitely 3 off in this version of the deck. Other cards are Black Sheep. This is important because what this does is you can discard it and you can activate one of 2 effects. One of them would be to add a Lunalight from your grave to your hand. Now this is essential because if you mill the Lunalight Tiger somehow, it's a light, so you cannot fuse with your Tearlament, so you cannot recycle it. Now what you then want to do is you can use your perfume to get the sheep instead of the tiger, because this is in the grave, and then you discard the sheep to get the tiger. And the sheep, if you mill both, the sheep is a dark monster. So this one you can use with your Tearlament fusions to get this back into the deck and then add it to get the Lunalight Tiger. Another effect of this would also be you can discard it to add a poly to your hand, which is just more redundancy to get into your Guardian Chimera place. Just like a very, very good going second card. Lastly, another Xyz that you can play, because these are dark, is you can use these 2, like if you're at the end of your combo, if you've used this often enough, you can go into Evil Swarm Nightmare. You also, if you want to run this engine with the Lunalights, Zephyros is also a very good card to include, because Zephyros is also level 4 Dark Body that balances your Lunalight Tiger, so you can use it again. So that's it for Lunalight engine. If you want to play a heavy combo deck, give this a try. I personally wouldn't recommend it in Kashtira meta right now, but maybe after you can try. For our last segment, I just wanted to give you some tips and tricks how to play the deck now. So hopefully you already are familiar with some of the lines due to the tier format, but some lines have changed, so I just wanted to show you some things that you should consider. So first of all is if you have Burial Goods, how to like play around Droll a bit. Let's say you have Burial Goods and any other card that searches, in this case Fenrir. What you want to do is you use the Burial Goods and you send the Trivy Karma. Now Trivy Karma is usually used to get the Pearl Rhino, but if you just use Trivy Karma here to get the Pearl Rhino and your opponent drolls you, then this card doesn't really do much. You're kind of stuck here. So what you want to do instead is you want to leave the Trivy Karma in the grave. You want to activate whatever other searcher you have, for example the Fenrir here, and for example in this line what you can do is you get the Tearlament Kashtira, and then your opponent activates Droll. Now you can chain to the Droll the Trivy Karma and then get your search. Now you have been drolled, so the Pearl Rhino still is not really useful. So consider in that situation, instead of Pearl Rhino, getting a Sully Egg, for example. Depending on whatever your hand is, like if you can already play, you special the Tier Cache or you mill something else and then you have the trap set up. But just like an idea how to play around Droll a bit with Trivy Karma. Don't just like shotgun it unless you have to. So the next one also revolves around Tearlament Kashtira, and that is something like Rhino Heart Tier Cache. Not the most ideal combination, but it definitely plays. So if you don't have like a Shiren access in this case, generally how I like to play is I want to go resolve Shiren, I want to get Rhino on board, and then I want to make an Xyz with Shiren and Rhino and so on and so forth. and then after I resolve Chiron, I want to resolve tier cache. But if you don't have Chiron access and you kind of have to just mill to get going, what you want to do is you just normal the Rhino Heart, activate the effect, send the other tier cache, this mills 2, and then you can special the tier cache to banish this, and this then mills 3. So you just milled 5. It's something you should consider to get you started if you don't have anything else going for you. Ideally, you have a Chiron to start off with. Now, another thing that's important is if you don't have any tier cards in your hand except for Tearlament Cache Tira, and you mill and you hit a Rhino Heart. What you can do is you can go Rhino Heart effect engrave, and let's put another tier card in here. You activate Rhino Heart effect, and then you chain Tearlament Cache Tira, special summon it, banish this card, and then the Rhino still resolves and comes back, and you don't have to discard because you don't have to resolve every part of the Rhino Heart effect. You only have to, you discard if you have something in hand. Obviously, you can only activate the effect if you have a card to discard, but after the activation, if you get rid of the card in hand, you can just special the tier cache, and you don't have to discard. Now, Chiron also works in a similar way, but it's not as free as this. So if you have Chiron and tier cache and no other tier cards in hand, you can go activate Chiron, chaining 1, and chaining 2, you go tier cache, special summon. The Chiron will still special summon itself, but the way Chiron is written is you special it, then you discard, and then you mill 3. Now, because you don't have a monster left in your hand, because you just got rid of it, you can't discard, but you also cannot mill, because the mill happens after the discard. So this is if you want to get both on board. You still get a mill 3, but you don't get this mill 3. Just keep that in mind. Now, speaking of Chiron, the way I play usually starts with Chiron. It just does so much for you. It mills for you. It is a tier name that you can get off the board later. It is kind of nip protection because if this gets nipped, it triggers. So Chiron definitely the first one you want to get to your hand. Now, as for the order of fusions, if you have Rhino Heart and you have a free send, you always want to send Havness first, because Merly is sendable off of Sprint if you access this somehow. And Chiron, as I said, you want a special Chiron, and you want to trigger Chiron by overlaying these two, go into Redoer, and then use the Redoer effect, detaching the Chiron, and then triggering her. So that's why Rhino Heart should always send the Havness first. Now, another thing worth mentioning is the combination of Pearl Rhino and Kaleido Heart. Now, oftentimes you will do this when you summon the Rhino Heart, Kaleido Heart, and that is using Pearl Rhino targeting the Rhino Heart, so it gets destroyed, and then do its own effect. It can come back once per turn, and then you have to send a Tearlament card from a deck to your grave. That can be a Tearlament name if you have resolved all of them, if you want to get another fusion off. But oftentimes what I do is I send the Scream and I add the Sully Egg, because this combination alone, these three, is already a decent grind game for you, because you get a pop, you get a shuffle, you get a negate, and in your opponent's turn you also send a Tearlament card. In this case it would be a name. So this already does a lot for you. And usually what I do in my combo is I do some sort of negate, and then I want to go into, if I have the field spell, into Kaleido Heart to send the Scream to get the Sully Egg and have that grind game set up. Now, one thing to note here is if you do this play and you have Cross Sheep and you have a target for Cross Sheep engrave, let's find Rhino Heart. Note that Cross Sheep checks on resolve what monsters it points to. So what you want to do is you special summon it here, and you go chain link 1 Pearl Rhino target Kaleido Heart, chain link 2 Cross Sheep, because now Cross Sheep resolves, it checks, okay, it looks at a fusion monster, it can summon, and then you pop. If you do it the other way around, so chaining one cross sheep, chaining to Pearl Rhino target Kaleido, you pop this, then cross sheep resolves, it doesn't point to anything, and you do not summon. So that is important if you do this play with a cross sheep. Different thing with cross sheep is also you can, if your field is full and you have this zone, you kind of have to use the zone for the redoer. That's fine because you can summon the redoer here and you can just banish it, and then this zone is freed up. You trigger the Chiron, you summon the fusion here, and then the cross sheep triggers get something else back. Now, a different thing I wanted to just mention is playing around with Scream. When do you play it from hand and when do you not? So oftentimes what you have is a combination of like Scream and Chiron. And there's the question, okay, do you play the Scream so you get 6 mills, or do you keep the Scream in hand because in case you mill a Rhino Heart, you want a Tearlament card to discard. That depends on how your hand is composed, obviously. So obviously if you have another tier card, then you just play this because you have another discard. But if this is your only tier card and the rest of your hand does not get you to play, you want to activate this so you get 6 mills and you try to hit something. Now, if you have something like a Kelbeck in hand in addition, then I would consider keeping the Scream in hand, just because you already mill 8 and there is a high chance now that you hit a Rhino Heart that you want to get onto the board. Okay, now I've touched upon Nibiru before, and just as a reminder, how I like to play around Nibiru is I want to keep the Chiron on board. Again, I like to start with Chiron, and at some point you either mill or you normal summon a Rhino Heart to get to a fusion. Now, if the Rhino Heart triggers a fusion and you have a King of the Swamp, you can just go into one of these two, and that already does it for you. In some lists, you can also get into Baron, which also helps negate the Nibiru. But in case you have this setup and you don't have the King of the Swamp yet, you want to keep this. What you can also do is, depending on if you want to add another summon to your combo, is just have this redoer here, because it doesn't matter if they nib you here, you can fusion. If they nib you here, you can use redoer effect to fuse. It's only a matter of where did the Rhino Heart come from. Did you normal summon it? Then you probably keep this because you can trigger both. If it came from the grave, you probably want to do this early to not have the Rhino Heart banished if they Nibiru you. So if they Nibiru you here, both of these go to the graveyard and you get the trigger. Now, the last thing I wanted to show is playing through Dark Ruler no more. And usually what you want to do is you have a trap setup. In most lists it's going to be Zodiac, but some lists have play Shadow's Schism. So continuous traps are very good to play around Dark Ruler no more, because what you want to do is you have like a Beatrice, for example, or you have a Redoer. Any of those work. And let's put a Chiron on the Redoer. Now, if your opponent activates Dark Ruler, you cannot react to these two. But what you can react with is the Zodiac, and then you activated a trap in response to their spell card. And you can react to the Zodiac with a monster effect. So now you can use either of these effects, depending on what deck you play. Let's say you play just pure and you have Redoer. You can then use the Redoer effect. This goes to the grave. The Dark Ruler resolves. Some of your stuff is negated. Let's play a... Where is he? Let's put the Kaleido Heart here too. Kaleido or Vulkalos both work in this case too. So the Chiron will then trigger, get you a fusion. And even though the Vulkalos is negated, or the Kaleido Heart, you can send this card any of these cards to the grave with Soliak so that they come back and then they're not negated anymore. In the case of Collider Rod, that's all you need to do is you just send it to the grave, you get it back, you send something from your deck, probably a tier name to fuse again, and you shuffle something, and also something's negated. If you didn't have this, but you had the Rule Colors, you can go and just send the Rule Colors, get it back. Now you have the summon negate again. Just remember that this won't come back if you send itself. So what you often can do instead is, after they used the Soliak and Rule Colors came back, you use the Rule Colors to send the Soliak to negate the summon. Then the Soliak triggers, and what you want to do is you want to get a Tearlament Cash Tira from your deck. So now you have another interaction during your opponent's turn. Speaking of Tearlament's Cash Tira, just something to note is I really want to use this card a lot. So after I have this Sharbin set up through, I want to search Tier Cash because it's also a body that mills 3. And if after that I still have a search left, I want to search a second Tier Cash. So get this to my hand, keep it in hand, and then you go link this off for Masquerena or whatever link you play. And during your opponent's turn, you can just play the next one and do this and mill another 3. And then you can use the Masquerena that you just made plus this to go into sprint. And there you have it. That's it for now, the Tearlament guide. Hope you found this information useful and can use it as a starting point for your own deck building. And I'm really excited to see what people can come up with Tearlament in the future, using this information maybe even. And maybe once we have new builds, maybe I'm going to make part 3. Who knows? If you have any questions regarding Tearlament, join the Discord. The link is in the description. Maybe follow me on Twitter too. Definitely like and subscribe the video. And lastly, I wanted to give some shout outs to people who I talk about Tearlament with, more or less. First of all would be Nicholas, who I talk to about Tearlament since the nerf. We just talk about like every week. Then Shiv, who I also talked to about the deck more recently. Shout outs to the Joshua Schmidt Discord, which is a very nice place to talk Yu-Gi-Oh! Shout out to Atrocity on Kate on Twitter. And lastly, shout out to Doba, just because Doba. Alright, see you next time.